I want to start off this video with a fact. No bold statements, no bullshit takes, just an indicative fact. With Billy Napier coming in to coach the Florida Gators in 2022, they've gone through 4 head coaches since 2014, which is more than any other SEC program in that time. What does that mean? Well, it can mean a lot of things. The Gators could have a high standard of winning that hasn't been reached. It could be that nobody's been able to understand Florida football, or it could mean that Florida just doesn't have a clue on what they really are.
What the does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
Either way, the Florida Gators are a beautiful mess of a team that are coming into a 2022 season where nothing is certain and everything is up for grabs, whether it be positions on a depth chart or the entire SEC East. I'm Kevin Redfield from the Dropout Sports, and let's get right into it. But just one second, before we get right into it, I just gotta ask y'all to like this video and sub to the channel. Alright, now let's get back into it. First off, just as an extremely quick refresher, how did we get here? And by here, I mean June, insert day of publishing here, 2022, where Billy Napier is in his first summer as the UF head coach. Well, over the past 8 years, there have been this rotation of coaches that have promised to bring Florida back to the national relevancy. Back to those championship days of Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier. Each one comes in with an impressive resume that takes them to that almost elite level, and for a year or two they deliver. But then they'll have that one year that seals their fate in Gainesville. Whether it be 2013 when Will Muschamp went 4-8, 2017 when Jim McElwain was let go mid-season, or this last season when Dan Mullen gave Florida their first 2-win interconference season since 1986. And now, in comes one of the hottest coaches previously on the market, Billy Napier. Napier comes in from the University of Louisiana, where he went 40-12, including going 20-2 in his last 2 seasons. His teams were highlighted by a run-heavy offense that played aggressively and yet efficiently, and a defense that didn't allow points to be put on the board. In the transition to Gainesville, Napier brings along his longtime offensive coordinator Ron Sale and the 31-year-old co-defensive coordinator Patrick Toney. So along with some UL transfers coming in, Napier's basically bringing his group of 5 strategies and pieces over to the SEC, which in the past for other coaches has a so-so chance of working out. We saw it with Urban Meyer himself when he went from BGSU to Utah straight to Florida. But that's not always the case. Billy Napier, no matter how touted he was on the coaching market, is a risk. And as much as I loved watching the Ragin' Cajuns last year with Levi Lewis, Montrell Johnson, and everyone else dominating the Sun Belt, there is no guarantee that Florida will give him the same kind of stability and success. Alright, so going from the coach to the players, how is the Florida Gators roster? First off, the quarterback situation is gonna be what makes or breaks Napier's and Sale's offense. Anthony Richardson, for how bad his stats looked last season, is coming in with a ton of weight on his shoulders. People, and more specifically Gator fans, are expecting Richardson to come in and compete with those top SEC guys like Hendon Hooker, Will Levis, and so on. He won't get as many reps as those guys will, but the mark of a good Napier team is an efficient QB1. And if the Gators are going to be putting points on the board, they can't have Richardson throwing picks at the rate that he and Emory Jones were last season. The running back position is also one that's going to be crucial, and it is in a bit of a gray area. With Damon Pierce leaving after 2 great years as the undisputed #1 guy, the Gators have a couple former 5-star guys in Lorenzo Lingard and Demarkcus Bowman waiting in the wings. But Naquan Wright is the leading rusher coming back. But again, Montrell Johnson is another guy that can come in and shake up the situation. He's coming in as a transfer from UL, where he led the team in rushing yards as a freshman. I did a previous video some months back about Louisiana, and in that, I showed a ton of love for Johnson being an extremely well-built and decisive back. And that won't change coming into Florida. The RB1 position is anyone's guess, which is kind of a theme for the Gators at this point. The top receiver and tight end from last year are gone, and again, the depth chart spots are up for grabs. Although the return of their second best receiver, Justin Shorter, is a good sign. Xavier Henderson and Trent Whitmore will also try to make their marks, but One guy I was reading up on that some people seem to have high hopes for is Marcus Burke. Coming in at 6'4", 187, Burke only caught passes in one game against South Carolina, but those 2 catches went for 73 yards. A lot of the hype in this kid is around his size and potential, and with a small sample size, there's no saying what's going to happen with him this season, but he may just break out. Keon Zipperer rounds out this section as a senior tight end who will look to be the rock of the offense. And here's the speedrun section. The offensive and defensive lines are going to have some solid starters coming back along with some transfers coming in to fill in those gaps. The linebacker spots, besides outside linebacker with Ventrell Miller coming back from injury, will be a mixed bag of whoever can get into the rotation. And despite losing Kaiir Elam, the Gators will have a ton of talent in the secondary as they seem to have every year. Despite the mid-season slip-ups from 2021, Florida had a pretty decent defense, but the onus is going to be carried out by those returners and the combined minds of co-coordinators Patrick Toney and veteran Sean Spencer, both having NFL experience behind them. For the 2022 season, Florida has a plethora of good and bad things going on with their roster, and in classic Florida fashion, their mess makes it hard to predict their season. But one thing I can say is that it won't be like 2021. Yes, the first 2 games are going to be tough with Utah and Kentucky straight away, but after that they have USF, Tennessee, Eastern Washington, Mizzou, and LSU. And if I'm Florida, that's a pretty good 5-game stretch to bounce back. After that though is the gauntlet of Georgia, Texas A&M, and underratedly South Carolina. All 3 of those will be challenging, but to close out the season against a tragic Vandy team and a weak Florida State team, the Gators have a pretty easy schedule. I could see anywhere from 7-5 to 10-2 depending on how they react to those tough losses, but even if they had a bad bowl game, they shouldn't be in the shitty condition like they were in 2021 going against UCF. Moving past that and looking towards the future, I guess the best way to say it is that the future is bright? Question mark? Look, I ain't got the answers, you ain't got the answers.
You ain't got the answer, Sway!
And that's just how Florida football is. Believe me, I never like saying a player or coach is bad or will be bad going forward. But when I look at how Florida has operated the past 8 or 9 years, I gotta point out that a downward spiral is always in the cards for them. Then again, they could also have a 2018 season where no one is expecting them to come through, and yet they do. Either way, it's unpredictable. Their record, their future, their week 1 starters, they're all unpredictable. But in witnessing the Florida program year in and year out, that's just how they roll. Thank y'all for watching.
Just a bunch of dropouts.